Hey there and welcome. Today we are going to be making a cute little pin cushion, a thumb pin cushion. Many of you have seen me sewing with it and you've asked if I could do a tutorial. So I've written the pattern up and I'm going to do the tutorial today here on YouTube, and I'll also have a tutorial on my blog with lots of photos, so depending on which way you prefer to learn, there are two options for you, and I'll put a link in the description below. So I've written up the pattern with a template here, because this template is unique to my design. Now this is not my original idea. I've had this for about 18 years, one of these, not this particular one. But my first thumb pin cushion was given to me by a really good friend of mine, and her mum made it. And she made one for her daughter, my friend, and for me. And as soon as I got it, I was like, oh wow, that is just so handy. Because I was forever losing my pin cushions. And I do use a lot of pins when I'm sewing. Now the only problem with the one that she made for me was that the pins kept going through and pricking my thumb. So I thought, that's not going to work. And so I came up with a way of putting a bit of plastic in here so that the pins hit the plastic and not my thumb. So this part, the template of the pattern, is unique to me, but the actual concept of a thumb pin cushion in this shape is not my idea. Now I thought it'd be fun to show you what happens to a thumb pin cushion after using it for about 16 years. So this was one of my original ones that I made, and it had a little hole in it. And I thought, let me just unpick it and show you what's happened. So this was the bit of plastic that I had put in it. And as you can see, there's lots of little holes and it's completely broken into bits. So it's, well, like I said, about 16 years old, so it's done pretty well. But you can see all those little holes. Maybe, I'm not sure if you can. I'll zoom in a little bit. Those holes would have been going into my thumb if I didn't have the plastic there. So that's a bit of dissection there for the first part of this tutorial. Now let's get on with the tutorial. So what you're going to need is you're going to need to print out the instructions, because you need to, in a minute, cut out the little template. You will need a 4-inch square of fabric. I like to use small prints because that looks quite nice. Then you need, for the plastic, you need the lid of a takeaway container or a butter container. I've already made one out of that, but you can get 2 lids out of a butter container here in Australia. And I think, not lids, sorry, 2 templates out of a butter container lid, and you can get about 4 out of this takeaway one. We need some writing implements. Sharpie, permanent marker for tracing the template onto the plastic. A pencil for turning the pin cushion out around later, and needle and thread, and some of this poly hobby fill. It's polyester. You can use whatever you want. You can use batting scraps, you can use whatever you have. So that is pretty much what we need. I'm just going to set these all aside and hope I don't lose the needle. And we're going to start with the 4-inch square, and we're going to fold it in half on the diagonal with the right sides together, and then go over to the iron and just press that. I'll be back. Okay, I've pressed that. It doesn't need to be too well pressed, just to keep it in its shape like that, otherwise it comes undone too quickly. Now next thing is we're going to sew around the edge here and we're going to stop about there. We're going to leave a gap of about 1 or 1.5 inches, and then we're going to keep sewing here. I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now I've used a different color thread. Usually I just use white or cream or whatever is on my machine, but I thought I would use different colors so that you could see it a bit better. I did backstitch here, and I backstitched here, here, and here. So you can see that I've just gone, you know, a little over an inch there, a little over an inch here, and all the way down there, and I've left this gap open. All right, I'm just going to trim all these threads off, and then we're going to turn the pincushion. I always want to say, oh, we've got to turn it inside out, but actually we've got to turn it right side out. So I've noticed in other patterns and things, people just say we have to turn it, which is a much easier way of saying it. This is where we need a pencil, or if you've got one of those purple things, which I do have. In fact, I probably have 2 of them, but do you think I can find either one of them? I cannot. So a pencil works, and we're just going to gently poke these corners out. I'm sure you've done this in many projects before, so you don't need much explanation. It doesn't have to be perfect in the corners there. Just like that is good. Okay, and then we've got most of the pincushion done. Now what we need to do is cut out the little plastic template piece, and I've done that already here. And I've cut out sort of on the inside of the outline, if that makes sense, because we're going to use the template to draw a line with a Sharpie. So this is a permanent marker, and that's going to give it a bit of a wider outline again. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, just the basic shape. You're never going to see this bit of plastic, but it is there to protect your thumb or your finger, because I know some people put it on their finger, so you can put it wherever you want. Okay, now we're going to cut that out. I would suggest you don't use sewing scissors, and I just cut roughly first. And then I just go back and do it on the line like that. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that is that. So this is one of the fiddly bits. We've got to get this into there. So the best way to do that is I sort of fold it in half. And most of it gets in there. And there it is. It's in there, trust me. Okay, then next up we're going to grab the hobby fill, and we're going to fill it. Now you want to put the hobby fill on top of the plastic, because that's where we're going to be putting the pins in. Like that. And we want the pins to go into the hobby fill and not into our into the other side, obviously, because that's got plastic on it. Now you can stuff it as full as you want to stuff it. So there's no right way or wrong way, or right amount or wrong amount. One thing I would do is just take a pin and see how far it goes in, and that goes pretty far, see that? So I'm quite happy with that. That's enough for me. And now we're going to grab our needle and thread and stitch this closed, this little edge here. Again, it's part of the fiddly bits. So what I do is I take the needle and I come up inside it, sort of a bit like that. And that hides the knot inside. And then I'll just hold these bits together like this. Again, it's fiddly, but it's not hard. And then you can use whatever stitch you want. Like, it really doesn't matter. I don't know what kind of stitch this is called. Might be a ladder stitch, I'm not sure. It's actually the same stitch I use to do my binding. So I go in there, I come up through there, and I go across to this side, come up there, pull it nice and tight, and I just keep going until the end. So you can use any stitch you like, it doesn't matter. This makes it almost invisible. As long as you close it, that's the main thing. So I had a look around on the internet, and there are a few other people that have done tutorials like this, but they've all done them years after I got my first pincushion, because I've been trying to see who the original designer was, but I have not been able to work that out. In any case, I have adapted the design, and I haven't seen anyone else who puts plastic in it, so I seem to be the only one doing that. And I think that makes all the difference, because every time, like, I take it to a sewing group or something, they're like, don't you prick your thumb or your finger? And I'm like, no, because there's plastic on it. I'm just going back one more time. Just to make it sure it's nice and nicely closed. Now, sometimes I do prick myself if I don't put the pin in there. Like, I might put it on an angle here, but there's no plastic behind here, right? So you do have to keep an eye on that. That rarely happens because I'm so used to it now. I know exactly where to put the pin in. Okay. So that's that done. So the next part is, sorry about my squeaky chair. The next part is to measure it and see how well it fits on your thumb. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing these two ends together, overlapping them and sewing them together. But everyone's thumb or finger or whatever is a different size. So this plastic is quite stiff, so I'd go a bit like this, fold it a little bit like that, just to make it just to fold it a bit, and then you go like that. Well, I reckon if I fold it over about like that, that'll be good for my thumb. So you could fold it like that and just slip stitch the end there, but mostly I've found that you need to fold it over and overlap it a bit. Okay, so once you know kind of where you want it to be, I use I double up my thread and put a knot at the end of both bits, because you want this to be strong. It's what's gonna keep your thumb push pincushion together. So I'm going to overlap it like that. And then I'm not going to even worry about it looking pretty or anything. I'm just going to get that needle in there. Oh look, I've got a bit of permanent marker on my thumb. Oh well. And I'm just going to try and tack it together as best I can. And there is a bit of pressure on it because the plastic wants to spring back, but once you get a few stitches in there, it's easier to handle. Now I've got a phone call coming in. I will call them back later. So I'm just going to keep sewing back and forth in here until it's nice and strong. Like I said, it's not neat or anything, but you really can't see it. Even though this is a pinky, darker pink than the background, even then you really can't see it, but maybe that's because my eyes aren't that great. And I reckon that's going to be pretty strong. I'm just going to cut that off. And there we have a finished pincushion. Need some pins. Oh, there goes a pin. So that's quite good. I'm happy with that. So you can, some people like to put it on their finger, but I love to have it on my thumb because I use it for, you know, when I'm sewing and piecing. And it's just so easy when you're sewing like this, just to take it out and put it on your thumb. So that is that. If you've got any questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you like this, it'd be great if you could subscribe and like and do all that jazz. And thank you so much for watching this. I will put links in the description to the pattern that you can print out. When you're printing the pattern out, just one hint, it's good to print actual size. And as you can see here, I do have a little 1-inch mark, which, let me have a look. Yeah, that's pretty close. So I printed actual size and it is 1 inch. If it's not, if your printer doesn't want to print that to 1 inch exactly, don't stress too much. You can always cut it out a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. So don't worry too much. So I'll put a link in the description to this. That's a free download for you. And I'll also put a link to the blog post, just in case you prefer to read blog posts and look at pictures. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.